Hello everyone. Before we start today's video, if you could all do me a solid and lightly tap the like button, perhaps share the video about and leave a comment. If you are not subscribed, subscribe as well. It would greatly help this channel. Thank you very much. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Captain's Log, Subject 221013.7. Our new heading takes us away from the requested mediation location. The reason why is I've decided to launch an unauthorized exterminatus, thereby resolving the entire problem of the Glassjawskis and the Guntkins. Hello everyone, welcome to the exhibition of stupid people. Today we're going to start with an honourable mention, and I have to mention this because it may well directly affect my end-of-year review into the daintiest of dainty girls, Chantal, aka Foodie Beauty. She has this year had one of the wildest years I've ever seen. She has done some rather interesting crunk streams, crying while drunk streams, quite rageful, quite vindictive, and very, very, very impulsive. This in turn has led to the inevitable, accusations that maybe she's bonkers. Let's just put it mildly and say that. There are a few people in her life I consider stalker types. One of them stream snipes her, doesn't really matter. Well, Chantal recently has deleted, at time of recording, her channel. She started to remove herself off multiple platforms, and it's because Chantal's going through a new story arc. This is the I'm going to replace a guy I really shouldn't have in my life but I desperately want to have with a facsimile. So Chantal has decided to walk down the arc of the Muslim arc, where she is embracing her new culture and faith and man who lives in a completely different continent by surrendering herself to him entirely, even though I was led to believe she was going to be moving into a new mansion where she'd be beezing it up like there's no tomorrow with Pete's. That might be changing soon. I guess the fun fact really is Chantal's impulsive enough that she'll just come back, because we know he's already this new man controlling her when she streams. So she stopped streaming, but can't help but stream, so streams when he's asleep. Second, she started wearing full head covering to embrace her new culture, even though in the very country this new man exists, it is not mandatory or anything like that. And I guess the other thing really is she started to look a lot like Amy's life journey. If my end-of-year review is about to end on Chantal, this is one hell of a way to end, I will admit. It also comes across as desperate. Desperate because while I would want her to be happy, everything she is now doing is indicative of somebody who is allowing someone else to control them. She is not making a decision for herself, she is letting someone do it for her, which is quite normal in certain countries around this world. Not that it is remotely acceptable, but then I have to go back to the original problem. Chantal is so desperate to have a version of Nada in her life that she will happily settle for somebody who is like Nada because similar area of the world, maybe similar belief, or exotic and taboo, oh my! When in reality she is setting herself up for another monumental fall. And that is not something anyone would want for anyone. Yet Chantal is too blind, let's call it that, to see that what she is doing is beyond cliche. It is a particular type of trope, and I don't think she understands it. But if Chantal has deleted a channel and it stays deleted, that's unfortunate. Especially for those who spend most of their time responding to every single facet of her existence and turning it into something about themselves. Because there are people within that area that do that. It's quite embarrassing. Now I do want to insert, Chantal had claimed that she is out because as long as her harassers and bullies are allowed on YouTube, she won't be. I don't believe that is the case at all. Although I am very much intrigued based on a previous community post of hers putting, I believe, FFG on blast to see what FFG does, since all she does is exist on Chantal's content. Thought I'd start with this before we move on to Down syndrome. Not a joke. That's literally where we're going next. There is a restaurant chain, a franchise called Wendy's. They have, because they have to adhere to American law, a very inclusive environment. Up until very recently, that is, a store in North Carolina had done so. For this, we insert a man called Dennis Peak, a 51-year-old loyal staffer. Dennis Peak has Down syndrome, and he was recently fired from his job because, and he was told this, he was unable to perform the duties of a normal person's job. Now, what fascinated me about this was, he had been with the company for 20 years. He had a reputation, according to the article I have linked in the pinned comment down below, for being welcoming, hardworking, and got on very well with all customers that come into the store. The store manager in question didn't actually tell Dennis this though, they told his family, and the family had chosen not to tell him out of fear of distressing him. This led to a frustrated sister posting on Facebook. This in turn went viral on Facebook, which in turn led to the brother deciding not to return to Wendy's because Wendy's had offered him his job back, instead favouring a retirement party. At the age of 51, and having worked for the company for 20 years, the man had deserved his rest. When asked to comment, Carolina Restaurant Group, which is the franchise organisation, had said, "We are committed to creating a welcoming and inclusive environment for our employees and customers. This was an unfortunate mistake and lapse in protocol. We are in touch with the employee's family and we are looking forward to welcoming him back to the restaurant." So the part of the law that I mentioned earlier that is relevant is the American with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, which bans employers from discriminating against workers who are disabled, and employers are also banned from choosing not to hire an applicant who is disabled and must also make reasonable accommodations for that worker's disability. Managers who wish to fire a disabled worker for underperforming must ensure they followed any company policies, such as giving out warnings before terminating someone's role. Based on the fact they U-turned so fast, it is highly likely not one warning was issued, and they can't claim he had underperformed because he'd worked for them for 20 years, and the man clearly was loyal without a fault. Now, I find this interesting for a number of reasons. The first one is obvious. If you can't do the job, you need to follow the procedure of the company to remove that person, give them the chances to improve, and go from there. It is the only way people will learn. Second, you have to accommodate for people with disabilities. In a business setting, many people roll their eyes and say, "No, money." And there's a point to that. But if you have to obey the law of the land, you have to obey it. Simple as that. And since Wendy's have reached out and said they're actually willing to help with the expenses for that retirement party, I hope it's an expensive one. An actor by the name of Guy Branum says that he has real problems with Darren Aronofsky casting a straight actor who is not very fat for the lead role in movie The Whale. The Whale itself as a movie is one of the most anticipated movies of the year, not least because Brendan Fraser, who doesn't like him seriously? The man has had a redemption arc of late that has been quite impressive. Brendan Fraser was cast as a 600-pound gay man hoping to reconnect with his daughter years after abandoning his family. For Brendan Fraser to play this role, he had to use a fat suit, which Brendan admitted gave him a greater understanding of what daily life is like for people with that body type, so morbid obesity. Guy Branum, though, doesn't really care for this at all, and there's a reason why, but I'll give you a hint. If you've seen my other channel, Electric Boogaloo, where I talked about the Bros movie, he's in this. He was quoted as saying, to Pride, "I think that the source material of The Whale is problematic. I think that it's trying to use extreme fatness as a metaphor for gay pain, and as an actual fat gay person, I feel like my life doesn't need to be a metaphor for somebody else's pain." He also took issue of casting Brendan Fraser by saying, "I also have real problems with the fact that they cast a straight actor who is not very fat and who used prosthetics to represent fatness in the film. I think it allows people to talk about the character as an object in a way that wouldn't be possible if it were an actual fat person who you had to look in the eyes." One thinks you might either be salty that you weren't cast for the role, or that you were incredibly salty that you weren't cast for the role. I don't care about someone's sexuality, I care about their performance. I don't care about their obesity, I care about the performance. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is what is being said, but you have overanalyzed by saying that your life doesn't need to be a metaphor for somebody else's pain, where you've made it all about yourself because apparently you're the only authority on fat gay men. And your issue with a straight actor is entirely because it's a straight actor. Again though, the performance isn't seen that way by the casual viewer. It's why Brendan Fraser got a rather lengthy standing ovation for his performance, and rightly so. The man's been through the ringer and he deserves his time in the sun. People like you, Guy Branum, dunking on him over a point that isn't even a point shows just how shallow you are. Everything about the identity, but nothing about the substance and the quality, which speaks volumes about why movies like what you've been in, Bros, flopped. A movie that some have just called a glorified porno. So rather than talk about the alleged cultural appropriation of Great British Bake Off, or politicians saying that those struggling to pay their bills should get a new job, both of which are quite amusing when you really break it down, we're going to talk about Tom Felton, aka Draco Malfoy from the Harry Potter movies. He recently praised J.K. Rowling for creating Harry Potter because he believes that her work should be celebrated for bringing together so many people of so many different generations. And there's a point to that. This though falls and runs contrary to everyone else who has had to stand up and say, we made millions off this, but heard disavow. Let me go count my money. Because Tom Felton hasn't fallen in line, he has in turn been branded a snake by many trans right activists who believe that by him celebrating her, he himself could be transphobic. Some examples would include Strength to Dream. Oh, so J.K. Rowling is the one being attacked and her attacking the trans community on a daily basis is conveniently ignored? F off. Tom Felton can F off as well, crawling little snake. Thankfully, Watson and Radcliffe have publicly totally distanced themselves. Simon Williams. Really? The guy who played a bully and pretty damningly evil character is expected to convince us that the person who created his character and helped launch his fame is not on a hate tour against trans women? Something he never said, by the way. In fact, many tweets about this seem to center around him encouraging J.K. Rowling, but that's not what he's doing. He has outright said her works brought people together. That's all he really said. But the outrage, the furor, is completely manufactured for the sake of, well, that little bubble of us thinking you were cool and attractive has been burst because you spoke up. It's quite amusing. You'll see some in This Week at Twitter tomorrow of other famous people talking about, for example, certain needly objects that go into your arm, and many people have had several of these to help fight off something. When it's come out that some of this wasn't even tested on people and, well, I can't say more or YouTube will yeet me. Well, we're going to try tomorrow anyway. And I won't deny, as more people are starting to do things like this, even if it is unintentional, it is, the reaction especially, exquisite.